This week, it's a decidedly international feel. We're coming from Edinburgh, from Glasgow, New York City, and Cologne. Back where it all began, the master Eurocrack dealer. Alex.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Your new home. Wow. This is insane.
Yeah. So we're still getting set up.
Right.
But it's we'll have
So talk to me about Signal Sounds, because it's been going for a while.
3 years. It was set up by Jason. Jason and I used to work together at Rub-a-Dub.
Okay.
And Jason actually hired me at Rub-a-Dub.
Okay, gotcha.
After he left Rub-a-Dub and set up Signal Sounds, we continued talking. I came on board and we've started distributing a few brands that I was working with at Rub-a-Dub, so Expert Sleepers, Instruo.
Discovered that Oz and I have the same dentist.
Yes, you said the other day.
It was great. He told me a trade secret, but it was like, dentist waiting room, probably safe here. It's like very Cold War.
And we've just taken on Future Sound Systems for distribution.
Oh, brilliant! I'm a massive fan of them.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing Steady State Fate in the UK.
Lots of amazing things have happened since we last met.
Yeah.
Like the Ableton, embracing CV, and this is here to stay, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And on that subject, the ES9.
Okay, and I've got
That's yours. I've got one in my rig at home, and I think I'm going to have to send that to someone.
Oh no.
And but yeah, I think this is it. So with that like CV tools thing, you know, and I mean obviously Silent Ways existed for a long time, so there have been ways of getting CV from your computer into your modular and vice versa. But when the big companies like Ableton and Native Instruments with Reactor blocks start taking it on, you know, it's like
you're laughing.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, this is the key to like unlock all of that stuff. So CV in and out, and audio in and out.
Right.
And just USB to a computer. These are 14 inputs.
Right.
8 outputs at Eurorack level, at modular level, and then 1/4 inch balanced outputs, headphone output, and SP diff in and out, so stereo over SP diff as well.
Oh, very nice. In fact, I can't wait to get that.
Yeah. It's really good. How I kind of felt about computers, or using computers and synthesizers for ages, was that they were kind of two completely separate worlds. You did synthesizer time, and then you did computer time.
Yeah.
And there was this like disconnect. I met Oz at Frankfurt Music Messe. I'd been lucky enough to start using the Expert Sleepers stuff pretty early on. And that disconnect just disappeared. So it's really exciting for me that like lots of other people are getting into that.
Absolutely, and they seem to be like right place, right time, because Ableton, when they did these new CV tools, it was all on.
All the vintage stuff is Jason's. It's important to show people the history, and longer term it would be good to give people the opportunity to like actually play with them.
I think an interesting thing that's happening, I don't know if you are seeing this as well, is particularly with the Mooga Fugas being discontinued, is that how actually these things are becoming quite good investment.
Some of that is kind of crazy. With those Mooga Fugas, towards the end of their life, you couldn't sell them. As soon as they discontinued them, the price just starts creeping up and up and up. And I saw somebody advertising one of those.
Yes, the analog delays are
$5,000.
That's insane. Yeah. And any current favourites that you're enjoying?
Yes.
Funny you should say that.
It's not a module.
What is that? Oh no!
Australian company called Echo Fix. Chap's been restoring and servicing tape machines and tape delays for years and years and years. Made the decision to, I've got the experience and know-how to design and build one. And so he's built a new tape delay. And it's like this thing, except it's got a lower noise floor.
Right.
it's new, so everything works. The level of engineering that's gone into it is just absolutely amazing.
So how much do these retail at?
So they're not cheap, but you know, quite often nice things aren't.
Oh my lord.
It's so beautiful. He's had tape heads and tape made from scratch. CV inputs. You can interface it with that kind of gear and you can modulate it.
Oh wow.
The kind of amazing thing about that is obviously you can do like lots of fast modulation in Eurorack, but this thing's mechanical.
Okay.
So there'll be a mechanical threshold that it can get to, but it's all cleverly limited so that if you send it stuff that's way faster than the actual mechanics can work, it'll probably do something odd, but you know, you're not gonna damage it. Reverb Chorus.
Oh, nice.
And the reverb, it's got a built-in spring, and it's got a digital reverb where you can have a blend of the two. And yeah, I mean the reverb just.
So, and we're currently in what mode? This is not sound on sound.
So no, but you can have sound on sound on, and if I turn the echo volume up, it gets sort of sludgier.
Yeah.
And then of course you can.
So it's like a Leslie. Amazing. I'm not sponsored by Signal Sounds, but they're just a fantastic company. So do check out their site down below and go and visit them next time you're in Glasgow. Right, over to you, Sandy.
Okay, so I thought I would do a quick tutorial of how I set up the patch for the jam that we just saw in the last video. So where we last left off from the sort of electron deep dive was that we had Pamela's new workout clocked to analog 4 and clocked to the whole system. You can see that blinking away here at 115 BPM. And I've got some different things going on here. So let's take a look and then we'll start patching these out. So output 1 here is at 1.3 times the tempo, which gives it a sort of a dotted output. And I've got that set to send an envelope, CV envelope out. And I've got that using the Euclidean features here. So it's doing 15 steps of triggers, and it's triggering 8 times out of those 15 steps as sort of symmetrically as possible. So what I've got that doing, the only things I've left patched up from that jam are the clock and run signals coming out the analog 4, and the output from my output, and the routing from the VCA output, which is pretty standard here. So what I would do, take the output from Platts, which in this case is just going to go straight from Platts to the Hex Mix VCA. And I'll turn that up now. And that's just sort of droning away on the, looks like the wavetable algorithm. Now if I send that trigger from output 1 of Pamela's new workout into the trig input, you can hear it doing that. And if I just drop in a voice from the analog 4, like the bass line, for instance, just a moment, you can hear how that sits timing-wise. So far so good. I'm just going to turn that down a second whilst I get these all patched up. Now, the other second output here is also sending out a trigger, and it's doing a slightly different timing. It's 1.5 of the tempo, and it is also sending out a sort of Euclidean pattern, which is 8 steps out of 16, so they don't quite match up. And this one I'm sending into the excite of the qubit scanned. And then if I take a patch cable and I route that out into the second VCA on the VCA here, turn that up. And then I turn up the plats alongside. This is sort of the rhythmic basis of the whole patch. I'm going to turn those both down a second. And so what I wanted to have with this was for both of these two patches to be getting pitch information that is at a different tempo or a different sort of rhythmic scale to their triggers. And I wanted it to be sort of improvised sounding, but not necessarily totally random. But just to demonstrate what I was going to start with, I'll get it totally random to begin with. So let's go output 3 here is just sending out quite a fast random pitch. And if I take that into our buffered multiple, which is the sort of multiple, the splitter that we use for pitch, and I take that out and into the VCO, sorry, and I take that out of the buffered multiple and into the volts per octave of plats, and also out of the buffered multiple and into the volts per octave of scanned. And now if I turn those both back up, it's that classic, dreadful, sort of 60s sci-fi computer brain sound, because it's just sending random voltages out to the volts per octave, but it's doing the same random voltages to both of them, which is what I wanted it to do. However, I'm not going to send it completely random values. Instead, we'll take this random sample and hold signal that we're getting from Pamela's new workout, and I'm going to put that into qubit scanned. Now, qubit scanned here is set up to quantize pitch, and I've set up a scale already in it, but if I take the Pamela's new workout into the X value, which is the X input, and then go from A, which is the output, that is the quantized info, pop that back into our buffered multiple now, and if I turn up plats here, you can still hear there's a random quality to it. But it's in a key now. So let's turn that back down just a second. What I wanted to do with some more of the outputs from Pamela's new workout was sort of animate the sound of our two patches. So for plats, what I did is for output 4, I've got another sample and hold, but it's a slightly slower one. And I've got that going into the morph input. I'm just going to turn down scan for now, and let's just turn up just plats whilst we mess with that. So I've got that going into the morph, and I can adjust how much that's affecting morph with this little 10K pot, this little attenuator. I can actually have it pull away from the value, or I can have it add on to the value. So at the moment I'm modulating it sort of upwards, which I think sounds good. And then for output 5 is just sending out a straight sort of pulse wave on tempo, and I'm going to send that into the timbre of flats, so we get this. And this might be easier to demonstrate if I take out some of the other stuff that's going on. So just very briefly, let's take out the green volts per octave here and this grey harmonic modulation and just turn this up. Oh, let's take out the trig as well, just so we're hearing just the... So that's our timbre modulation, and then we put our morph on top. and then a trig that's not quite in time with either of those. And then eventually stick our Volts per octave in there. There's a repetitive quality to it from the regular pattern that we're getting from Pamela's new workout for the trigger, and the overall sort of range and pitch of the Volts per octave. And there's also sort of repetitiveness to the modulation that we're doing, but none of it is totally in time with one another. So it has a really nice kind of, I don't know, variability to it. There's a quality there, but it's changing every time. So let's go back and look at scanned again, which was just kind of happily sort of farsing away in the background here. So what I did with this was, instead of taking it straight to the Hex Mix VCA, I actually took that into the Erica Synths DIY delay. And let's just take the output from that, if I can get a short enough cable, output from that into the VCA. So I've got dry-wet controls here, feedback. I can also reverse the sound, which I think sounds quite good actually, especially with this kind of, I don't know, it's got a slightly electric quality to the attack with the particular settings I've got on scanned. So that nice kind of snappy attack works really nicely when it's reversed, because it takes on a different, you get another quick ramp up into that. So that's great, but it's not really going to be in time with anything that we're doing. So output 6 from Pamela's new workout is just sending out a steady pulse wave, which I can use in the sync input of Erica Synths. And now the delay time will be mapped to the tempo. So I can get tempo mapped delay for a nice sort of rhythmic patterns with our delay. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to do was just send out a very, very slow, maybe like a quarter of tempo sample and hold value into the time control for this. And what that's going to do is, each time this value changes on output 7, which is happening every sort of 2 measures or so, it's going to send a different time value, which is just like turning the time knob on the front of this. It's not especially obvious what's going on here right now, so if I set this to very, very wet, so you're only hearing the delay signal, and then flick it onto the tape mode so we can hear every time it changes timing. So anyway, I'm leaving it on digital because I don't want those weird tape artifacts, and I'm making it mostly dry, so this is just like a background effect. And I'd like it to be quite quick. So a quick high feedback I always think sounds quite funky. So let's find the sweet spot on that, and then let's mix back in plats. And then just for good measure, let's throw in that bass line that I was using, just to get an idea of how this sits in terms of the timing. So I'm really happy with how that sits. And then the other things that I might want to do is, I have this going into some of the effects of the Analog 4. So if I turn those right off, this is actually the entirely dry signal, which is just a little bit too in your face for me. So I've got that going into a nice dreamy reverb on the Analog 4. And I've also got it going into the chorus of the Analog 4, which I just think sounds super lovely. It also has a delay, but I think putting delay on top of delay can get a little bit busy pretty quickly, especially because this is quite a busy patch sound already. But if I wanted to, I could throw this into another layer of delay. which is just a bit much. I might put a little bit on it just to tickle. So that's the patch that was used in the jam, really. The idea with this is it's just providing a bed of kind of slightly random, crazy rhythmic and melodic material, which really gives you a sense of the key, so that I can then throw in some quite unusual pad sounds and reasonably static bass, and still have a real sense of it being in a particular key. So if I turn this up and bring in the other elements from the Analog 4 that I was using, that's a lot of fun. But then I thought, well, this sounds really cool, and it's got a very sort of like 16th-y, semi-quavery feel. What would be kind of neat is if instead of having this in a straight 4/4, I actually have a bit of a dropped beat every so often. So instead of being the pattern that's 64 steps long, I then went and used 60 steps, which is essentially like 2 bars of 4/4 and a bar of 7/4, or if you like, 3 bars of 4/4 and a bar of 3/4. So just to kind of illustrate what that sounds like, I can bring in just the kick and snare from the analog rhythm, and maybe the hi-hat as well, just to give a sense of timing. We'll bring in all 3 of these, and let's bring that from the beginning of the pattern, and we get sudden I think that's quite funky. Yeah, lots of fun. And then with the Octatrack, I've got let's turn this off a second. On the Octatrack, I've got a couple of things going on. Namely, I've got one sort of sampled pattern that I've chopped up, which is kind of like a big dance beat that only really comes in about halfway through. It's designed to be a 4 on the floor, but I've kind of chopped it up and thrown in some reverse samples and stuff, and that sounds like this. So every time that 3/4 bar comes around, it sort of trips up on the last beat and reverses into the beginning of the pattern. And then the other things that I'm doing with the Octatrack, I'm using different scenes. So if I bring in just the patch from the modular again, so I can demonstrate this. I've got pattern scene 9 here, is kind of a low bandpass filter. And then I've got scene 10 here, which actually affects this beat by throwing it through a comb filter and filtering it. And then the other final thing that I use is scene 11 here, which high-pass filters, and then when it gets fully to the scene, it enables the delay freeze. Which can be quite a fun effect. And I've also got the delay effect going on. So that delay effect is the kind of the final fun piece of the puzzle for the performance. And I use the delay control here. And what I can do is these different buttons along the bottom here correspond to the different tracks. And I'm using button 16 here for track 8. And when I press that, it will freeze the delay. So let's hear what that sounds like. And then when I'm holding that down, the buttons on the left-hand side become controls. So I can slowly increase that. Anyway, back to you, Christian.
Right, back in Edinburgh now. Did I come back empty-handed? Of course I didn't. Let's go to the shed, check out what I've got. So along with the Expert Sleepers ES9, which I'll be looking at next week, I also came away with a modest haul from Mordax and Tip Top Audio. Into Frank they go. First the Mordax oscilloscope, which has a whole bunch of functions that at last make me feel less embarrassed about referring to labs instruments as if they're made in an actual lab. And yes, I've already ordered my white lab coat. On the other end of this functionality scale, this unit from Tip Top Audio does one thing, but oh, does it do it well. It's the original Roland 808 kick circuitry, but made for Eurorack. I wanted a pure sounding kick to fatten up whatever I'm doing with my DFAM, but as you would expect, first thing I'm going to do is try saturating it through some of Erica's various VCAs and mixers. Farty and nice. What I love about Modular Mondays is when we end on a piece of music. Now, Sandy and I haven't had an opportunity to create anything new for you this week, so I'm really proud to introduce a gentleman called Jens Hafman, who has allowed us to use an excerpt of music from the YouTube video linked below. Do go and have a look, like and subscribe if you can. It uses a combination of his out-of-the-box modular rig, which looks fantastic, and the piano book Winter Piano. So this is kind of a cross-platform mashup. If you haven't subscribed yet, there's loads of really amazing stuff coming up. One of those for this next piece of music from Jens, and as I said, you can see the full version in the video link below. See you next time.